What it do, cuckolds? It's your boy the Hater, and it's time for a first. This is an episode of Hater going to work, motherfuckers. Well, more like Hater going to a meeting, you know what I mean? Because the Hater works for himself, but he's got a meeting today, and I'm driving to that meeting. I actually have this meeting like 4 days a week, but nevertheless, the point is this is a new one because it's kind of early morning. Not that early because my meeting is not until like a little bit later, but you know what I'm saying, right? So I wanted to do a quick follow-up video because I'm trying to get myself into like a schedule of sorts, you know what I mean? As you may have noticed, I've been doing one video a day instead of like 2 or 3 like I did last month because I'm trying to like hone in on like a reasonable schedule, right? Which is ironic because, you know, during this month, I've been getting more views than ever, even though I'm doing fewer videos, which means the Hater's growing, cucks. But I wanted to do a throwaway video, basically a follow-up on the Jacob Fatu situation because I had a thought as I was driving, right? I've mentioned this before, but there was a group in WWE up in this bitch called Legacy, right? The premise of Legacy was they're like, you know, multi-generational wrestlers, right? Second and third generation wrestlers. So of course the group was led by the alpha male Randy Orton, and in it he had 2 lackeys, Ted DiBiase and Cookie Rhodes, right? The group experimented as well with other lackeys, right? They got Sim Snuka, who is Jimmy Snuka's son, right? But this guy was a jobber. He didn't fit into the group, right? Then they got the worst of the bunch, Manu, who was basically Jacob Fatu. It's the same thing. I don't want to hear how Jacob Fatu is better than Manu. No, he isn't. He's on the same level as Manu. And they kicked his ass out immediately. And now, even though the gimmick of Legacy was what I just said, it was just wrestlers whose fathers and maybe grandfathers were also wrestlers, right? That was the explicit gimmick. The implicit gimmick was also that these guys are the clear future of the business, right? The implicit gimmick was that these guys are all elite, right? The implicit gimmick was they're good-looking guys with great physiques. That's how it was presented, right? They would come up all oiled up. It was a little bit weird, you know what I'm saying? But with their little, you know, trunks, not wearing pants and things like that, like the Samoans tend to do. They had a very clear aesthetic presentation, right? Like if Randy Orton came out in jeans during this time, it just wouldn't work with the gimmick, right? Because the gimmick is like they're like these pure wrestlers, like it's in their blood, right? It's their legacy, right? They're a mix of entitled, right? Because they believe that it's theirs since their fathers were wrestlers, and they look like gods. They're supposed to look good, right? So when Sim Snuka and Manu joined, it's like, what the fuck is this, right? You see Randy Orton, Ted DiBiase Jr., and Cookie Rhodes, and you see a common theme. You're like, oh, these are all good-looking guys with great physiques. Then you see Manu, and you're like, what the fuck is this guy doing here, right? He doesn't fit in at all, right? There's no room for Manu in this group. Now, Manu had just as much of a claim. Like his father is like one of the wild Samoans. Like everybody's father is one of the wild Samoans. You know what I mean? He had a claim to it, but he didn't fit the group, right? And this got me thinking, not about Jacob Fatu because he certainly fits in the bloodline because the bloodline is not like Legacy. Like they're not presented as like good-looking guys, but they're presented as badasses for no reason, right? Like it's really silly. And there's a few comments that I saw. Some of them were old comments in my videos where people seem to like, and here's like, there's an issue with this, right? People seem to think, like, I think the UFC is to blame for this, right? People seem to think that there is no correlation between size and strength with fighting ability, right? These are people that have never been in a fight before. Like, if you've ever been in a fight, like the Hater has done combat sports, and I can tell you right now for a fact that the most important attribute in any sport, even like soccer, is strength, right? If you're strong, you're gonna do good in sports. It's really that simple, right? Look at Shaquille O'Neal. He has like zero technique, and he's one of the GOATs, right? Because he's just otherworldly strong. Look at LeBron. He is possibly the GOAT. He is otherworldly strong, right? Bruce Lee, who was like 5 foot nothing, right? Even he said, you can look this up, it's a quote. He explained that technique without strength is useless, right? So a lot of people who've never been in a fight and likely are fat and have never lifted a weight in their life, right? They want to believe, right? This is why Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is so popular, right? Like, it's this generation's karate. It's basically a scam. It's like some charlatan tells you like, oh, it's okay. You don't need to be fit. You don't need to be strong. You don't need to be tough. You don't even need to hit people, right? You don't need to do any of the things that makes you a good fighter. You just gotta learn arm locks, right? And of course, this is attractive to the unathletic population of this country, right? It's attractive because people are like, oh, I don't need to be like, I don't need to put in work, right? I can eat pizzas all day and donuts, and I'm gonna learn jiu-jitsu and put someone in a chin lock when it's time for a fight. Then these people go out in the real world, they get into a fight, someone smashes a beer mug on their head, and they're like, oh, wait a second, what just happened? I was supposed to be able to defend myself. And they learn real quick that they can't, right? Now, Jacob Fatu and the likes of Jacob Fatu, the Kevin Owenses of the world, the Sami Zaynses of the world, they are the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu of wrestling, right? In the real world, right, if you're big and strong, you're probably gonna win a lot of fights, right? Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Well, what about the one time when the small guy beat the big guy? David versus Goliath. Yeah, what they don't tell you is that 9 times out of 10, or like 98 times out of 100, the big guy wins. Like, if you have 2 guys fighting on the street, chances are the bigger guy is gonna win. Like, easily 8 out of 10 times, knowing nothing else, the big guy is gonna win. Now, that's also like, we're talking just size here, right? Because strength and size are not always correlated. There are small dudes who are like really, really strong, right? And there are exceptions, of course, but these are exceptions. So wrestling is a very aesthetic business for this reason, right? Because wrestling is fake. So we all know that Rey Mysterio any given day can beat Roman Reigns in a match because that's how the booker wanted it to happen, right? But because it's fake, the aesthetics matter even more, right? Because it has to be believable. People continue to live in fantasy land where like they think that because they, and also here's another thing, right? People are like, technique is important. Yeah, technique, like lifetime technique is important. Like, if you dedicate your life to a martial art, like if you train 2 hours a day, at least 4 days a week for 10 years, then you've developed the technique. People think that going to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu once a week for an hour, right? Half of the time they're doing calisthenics, they think that this is enough for them to have technique. Like, you do that and a stronger guy will out jiu-jitsu you. Like, he will just, like, I'll give you an example. One time, I was rolling, as they say, with this guy who was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it sure as shit isn't a white belt. And I had never done jiu-jitsu before. I did a little bit of wrestling back in the day, but I'm just strong, right? And I know a little bit about grappling, but I'm just strong. So, like, this guy went in, tried to do like a leg lock. I just put him in a side headlock, squeezed, he tapped out immediately, right? That's all it took. Because I'm so much stronger than him, I'm able to just put him out, right? He can't fight. You can't fight the bully choke. Oh, there's a technique for it. Yeah, if the guy is of the same strength as you, right? But it's not gonna work if I'm stronger. You're not gonna be able to push me off, right? So that's what I'm getting at. The Jacob Fatus of the world, the jobber wrestlers, the unappealing wrestlers are, like the Manus of the world, if you will, are this. They are the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The all flash but no actual substance, right? The whole idea behind wrestling is that because it's fake, we need our stars to be believable. Because if they're not even believable, in terms of appearance, then it's like, what philosophy can we use to justify that they're good? Like, for example, if you look at Kevin Owens, right? Like, your first instinct is, this guy would never make it in any sport because he's fat and doesn't do much, right? That's your instinct. Like, your heart is like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. What happened to Hulk Hogan? Like, this guy's being presented as being an equivalent to Hulk Hogan in some capacity? That doesn't make any sense, right? So, at the very least, when you see Batista, right, or John Cena, you don't ask yourself that question. You don't think to yourself, wow, what's this guy's hook? Like, why is he here? You're like, oh, I get it. This guy's big and strong, so there you have it, right? Just like I saw one of my old comments, someone was saying how, like, Montez Ford, like, this guy, he's like, Montez Ford would beat up, like, everybody right now and about 75% of Attitude Era. No, he wouldn't. Like Midian, remember Midian? Midian would bury Montez Ford in like 5 seconds. I mean, people don't remember this because back in the day, Midian was a goof, right? And everybody was like 6'8", but Midian's like 6'6". He's like a legit tough guy apparently too, right? Like, you think Montez Ford is beating up Ken Shamrock? Are you kidding me? Ken Shamrock would destroy this guy in 3 seconds. You think he's beating up Billy Gunn? Billy Gunn now would beat up Montez Ford. You know what I'm saying? And that's the problem. It's like we have adjusted the height and weight requirements so low that like Montez Ford, who has a lot of good qualities, is now one of the bigger guys, but he's not presented as one. Right? Like, it's okay, look. Would anyone be surprised if you found out that Montez Ford can bench press more than Jacob Fatu? Like, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense, right? But in a wrestling match, Jacob Fatu and Montez Ford, the match is going to be presented as, how can Montez Ford hurt Jacob Fatu? Well, he could just do a move on him, right? But for some reason, Jacob Fatu, like, gets the plot armor, right? He gets the boost. When you do a move on him, it doesn't work. When he does it on you, you're dead. You know? And these things are fun once in a while, right? Like, for example, The Undertaker rising up or Kane doing the rising up thing is fun because it fits their character and all that stuff, right? And if used correctly, it can make things more interesting, right? But the 19th Samoan being presented as a main eventer, like, it didn't work 18 times. It's not going to work this time, right? They tried to make Umaga main eventer. He got buried by Triple H. Rightfully so, might I add. They tried making Rikishi a main eventer. He got buried by Stone Cold and The Rock and Triple H and everybody. Rightfully so, might I add. Right? They always do this. They try to take like an average Samoan every couple of years, and they try to make him a main eventer. It never works. And then everyone's surprised. They're like, wow, I can't believe Umaga didn't main event WrestleMania. And I'm like, I can. I can. Like, it's very obvious to me, bruh. So, in conclusion, the point that I'm trying to make in this video isn't even about Jacob Fatu, because it's starting to get to a point I feel about him the way I feel about Montez, right? These are wrestlers that, like, I actually, in some capacity, enjoy seeing, right? Like, all things considered, Jacob Fatu is not a complete zero, right? He's overrated. He's never going to be a star. And in my opinion, he's being presented as a retard, and he only does a Samoan moveset. But he does have some intangibles, right? Like, for example, he stands out in this group of jobbers. He stands out, right? He has more of an aesthetic appeal, not in terms of being good looking, but like there's something special about him. Like, my buddy yesterday was telling me that back in the day he saw Jennifer Lopez at a Dolphins game, right? And I asked him, I was like, did she stand out? Like, was she as hot as you would think, right? Because I've never seen her in person, right? And he's like, yeah, she was, right? And I was like, did she stand out? And he was like, well, she was surrounded by 20 security guards. And I was like, aside from that, right? And he's like, yeah, she stood out, right? She has presence, he said, right? She's a star. You see what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that Jacob Fatu has like the star power of Jennifer Lopez. I don't think anybody would, that's a silly comparison, right? But he does have some presence. That can't be denied. But that's about it, right? So, like, if someone were to say, hater, what would you rather see, Camacho or Jacob Fatu? The answer is Jacob Fatu, of course. What would you rather see, Tama Tonga or Jacob Fatu? Like, I'm pretty sure I'd rather see anybody else other than Tama Tonga. Like, Tama Tonga is another one. Like, obviously Camacho is one of the worst wrestlers of all time. Tama Tonga ain't much better either, but like, what are you gonna do, right? Now, in this roster, we have people that have some potential. Or at least I should say, had some potential. Like fucking Austin Theory, right? Like, Austin Theory's a big, strong guy. You know what I mean? Like, he looks a little bit retarded, but like, I think most people would say he's a good-looking guy. He's got a very aesthetic physique. He can wrestle. He's athletic, right? He's decent on the mic. Like, he's better than Tama Tonga, you know what I mean? Like, Tama Tonga is one of the worst on the mic of all time. So, like, push this guy, right? Give him a push. But for some reason, it's like, all right, we're going to push the same old shit. I'm curious to see what's going to happen to the bloodline after this prolonged storyline ends, right? Because it's like, where do they go from there, right? Once like Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns beat them, where do they go from there? Maybe they go to Raw. That might be a smart idea, right? And they can just like be like a main faction there or something, I don't know. But what I'm getting at here is this, right? Wrestlers need to like, kind of have it all, right? And, Legacy, I started this video talking about Legacy, and I'm going to end this video talking about Legacy. Legacy was presented as like these three guys, obviously Randy Orton already is a main eventer, but the other two guys are going to be future main eventers, right? These other two guys are going to be like on the level of Randy Orton one day, right? Because they are similar in presentation, right? And when they try to like complicate the stable by adding people like Manu and Sim Snuka who just didn't fit, they just didn't fit, it didn't work, right? Those people had to be excised from the group, right? Now think of this parallel, think of the analogy as Legacy is the WWE, and obviously like Jacob Fatu, Kevin Owens, all these guys are the Manus of the world, right? They just don't belong, right? That's the analogy. Legacy is supposed to be what WWE is all about, and the current wrestling crop doesn't have many of these people. In fact, they have so few of these people that they have to go to AEW to get fucking, what's his face? To get good old, Cucky Rhodes to join. And that's pretty much it. Cuckolds.